keep your DREs and go with vvpat. I believe on pretty solid evidence, although some may be anecdotal, because we can't get a lot of the doing nothing is not an option. And whether you agree with the option or not, it is in fact based, I believe, on pretty solid evidence, although some may be anecdotal, because we can't get a lot of the hard, cold, fast statistical evidence that we need. But it's almost, and I keep going back to the illustration about show me a positive report about vvpats. Show me one. Yes, sir.
One of the
You're not going to show me one, are you? Okay. All right.
Again, I think the leadership here is we all recognize it, but I think it's astounding to get on that road. It's my hat's off to the governor and to you. That's the first thing. The second thing is what we can do with our boards of county commissioners is to stress, I think, that something has to be done. Your comment that nothing is not good enough, or however you express that, there's not a right answer out there. Not a single right answer. So again, appreciate you coming for the information, but any support we can give along the way, we'd be happy to do.
Sure. One of the things too is that as a supervisor that defended the systems tirelessly, when I think about the amount of time that under this proposal it's going to allow supervisors to conduct elections as opposed to having to continually defend touchscreen voting systems, I think that's a plus. Florida has spent way too much time defending voting systems, good, bad, or indifferent. I think we have spent way too much time. We have spent precious time defending voting systems that really, in my opinion, did not need defending. But because it is what it is, we spend a great deal of time defending those systems. And now, hopefully, this will be able to allow us to get back to the very heart of what we're elected to do, or what you're elected to do, and that is conduct elections and do them well. That's the key. I will tell you that that there's another piece to this as far as we go down this path. I said that I told the governor in the interview process that we would never be able to run elections from Tallahassee. Never. You cannot run elections from Tallahassee. It was attempted, and it just doesn't work. But because it doesn't work, you have to, we as a department, we need to be able to empower or train or provide support supervisors in their mission of conducting good elections. Not good, but great elections in Florida. Whether it's materials, training, whatever the case may be. And it's important that you understand that because I want to serve in more of a supportive role, and my staff wants to serve in a supportive role to the counties, I told the governor, because when the supervisors look good and are successful, we look good and we are successful. But it's not about looking good or being, it is about being successful, but it's not necessarily about looking good. It's about running great elections. The way you do that is you tend to the details. You tend to the details. Now, this is where I'm going to be a little critical on about this many supervisors in the state. I've done it all up 2 meetings, and we'll do it now. There's got to be accountability back or from the supervisors. There's accountability on our part. There's accountability on supervisors' part. We have supervisors, about this many. And how come I always harp on the bad ones? Not the bad ones, but the ones that don't do it right. We still have some supervisors that look at hard-coded dates in the code, list maintenance reports, voter education reports, overvote, undervote reports. They don't file them. They do not file them. My back's against the wall. Now that I put this hat on, we used to complain about the Department of State. Okay? We used to complain about them.
We still do.
We still do. Okay. But the fact is that I understand now how incredibly frustrated Dawn was when she was in the Division of Elections And there were counties out there not filing statutorily mandated reports. There's still one county in the state, what's the date, February 6th. Almost 3 months ago, we had a general election. They had yet to file the official signed copy of their election results with my office.
I'll get it in, Kurt. I'm
Please.
sorry.
Get up here, look at his empty. No, it's not Vicky. Got the fax copy, but they haven't filed the official signed copy. Now, there's a couple ways we can deal with this. Number one, we can ignore it. And for those of you that know me, know that I'm not an ignorer. Number two, there's the old carrot and stick. I'll hold the little carrot out there on the stick, and then hopefully you'll bite at it, and when you're good, then you'll get praised if you're all wacky with the stick. Well, I'm going to forego the carrot part, and we're going to go straight to the stick. I'm telling you, we've got to generate reports, the department has, for list maintenance, over votes, under votes, education, precinct by precinct results. 75 days to get those into the department. And those reports on my side are timely. I've got to report to the governor, the president, the speaker. We have spent a great deal of time calling supervisors, busting on supervisors, wanting this information. We will still call, but we're not going to keep busting. What we're going to do from now on is when the reports are due, with what data we have, we're going to publish it with notations in there which counties are missing. It's that simple. The one thing my staff does not think that I will do, but the law tells me and gives me the authority to do it, and that is I will ignore returns from counties that do not get the returns into me timely. And then I'll let those supervisors deal with their press and their candidates and their political parties on it. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. The time has come that, we're all big boys and girls, and we know what the law says. And the fact is that you're not going to have any problems out of the department if you follow the code. And when you have some supervisors, literally a handful, that thumb their nose at what the Florida Election Code says, and I think therein lies some of the systemic problems that we have. It's because when you read the code, I think the code is pretty clear. It's pretty clear. Granted, 106 gets a little goofy, but yet it's pretty clear on what the responsibilities are. And we're not wanting to set supervisors up for failure. My gosh, my deal is I want you to be successful. I want us to stay out of the newspaper, but I also want supervisors to understand the responsibility that the vision of the department has, making sure that we get these things in timely. Deb, you were going to say something?
Yeah, speaking of the deadlines and and I agree with you, but in order for the large counties, and I'm sure you've already thought of this, in order for the large counties to meet the current deadlines for filing unofficial results, and particularly if there's a recount, filing the second set of unofficial results that are reflected in the recount. I just do not feel that the current deadlines provide enough time for large counties to do it if we're going to have optical scan ballots countywide. And let me use last year as an example, if I may. The state was wanting to let us know on a Friday afternoon whether or not there needed to be a recount in a federal or a state race, or one or more. And we had, from the time they notified, we're going to notify us on Friday afternoon, until 3 p.m. Sunday to file a second set of unofficial returns after a recount.
Machine recount.
Machine recount. And we could have done that last year. In fact, we did a couple of recounts. But if we have 500,000 optical scan ballots to recount, I'm just not sure we will have time to do that between Friday afternoon and 3 p.m. on Sunday.
And it's just like with everything else, because we looked at, I know that the supervisors are advocating an expanded certification period for the primary and also one for the general in their legislative package. We were able, in our package, to accommodate the general. We've expanded in our proposal to the legislature, expanding the certification period for the general from 11 to 12 days, and then adjusting some internal deadlines to include provisional ballots into the official count. That's in ours. The problem we had when it comes to the primary certification is that if we had gone to the 10 days that the supervisors were advocating, and I saw it on the calendar, Sarah Jane Bradshaw in the division worked it out and showed me, we have 5 days from the end of certification to the 45th day prior to the general election where ballots have to be mailed. And the general consensus was very, very vividly that there is no way that in 5 days counties can print all their ballots and then get their overseas ballots out in 5 days. So my decision was to leave the certification period as is with 7 days for the primary because there just is no more time. We're working on trying to get the primary moved to the 10th week, which would allow us a little more time. But at this point, there seems to be just a little bit of pushback on that. I'm still working on the moving the primary to get it off of Labor Day. That's the big issue. One of the comments was, well, we don't want to go 10, so let's go 8 to get off of Labor Day. And I told the person I was talking to, let's leave it at 9 if you're going to move it to 8. You're still having to deal with Labor Day, and Labor Day is very, very problematic. So we understand that there are issues. We understand that there are issues simply because of the volumes of ballots and the short time frames that we have to get this stuff done. But until we end up, let's say, going to a spring primary, which I'm not advocating, but until we get, more than 9 weeks between primaries and generals, by the time you have your primary and you have 7 days or 10 days to certify a primary, you say, well, that has plenty of time. But in that time, you got to do provisional ballots, machine recounts, manual recounts, and certify. I don't think it's going to happen with the primary schedule, but we are trying to make some adjustments back to the general election. Speaking of recounts, in the proposal, the substantive language proposal, there is a provision for mandatory audits. The whole bill, which is being filed Monday, I think, in Congress. There are a number of bills in Congress that advocate and require manual audits. Some of those audit requirements require that they be conducted prior to certification. Our audit procedure, if you will, does not provide that audits are done prior to certification. What our proposal requires is 2% of your precincts or 1 precinct, and you have to hit 200 precincts or more to even get into more than 1 precinct. So the Hillsborough, the Pinellas counties in the world would have 2% of your total precincts that you would have to audit. What our proposal calls for is basically manually recounting every race on that ballot in those numbers of precincts. And you would start this after certification, but complete it by the end of the 9th day. You know, there's a 10-day contest period after every election. So if a party wanted to fashion a lawsuit, they still have 1 day to fashion the lawsuit and file it with the court. So that is the reason we didn't say 10 days. That way, the contest period is over. But yet you have to build up enough time in there to allow supervisors to conduct the audits, if you will. Yes, ma'am?
Who chooses the precinct?
The county canvassing board will choose the precincts. We specifically wrote it that way so that the old fox guard in the hen house, because I know how evil and vile these supervisors are. I say that jokingly. But the county canvassing board would select the precinct or precincts that would be manually audited as one of the last official things that they do. But they would randomly select those precincts, and then the audit would begin the day after certification or that day, whatever. But by the end of the 9th day, the audit report would be filed, a copy with the department, and you would keep a copy. And for municipal elections, that will all stay locally with the counties. We do not want copies of the municipal audits. But if we would require copies for county, legislative, state, national elections. Okay?
I support that. We do that with our machines now, but it's by policy, it's not by statute. I'm glad to see that being added.
Yes, and I will tell you, how things have changed, because probably 5 years ago, if I'd stood up here, it was like 5 weeks ago when I stood up here, the supervisor would probably, run me out of town on a rail. But I think supervisors understand the importance of doing it. I think that they can read the bills in Congress and see that some way, shape, or form, there's going to be some level of audits locally. And why not audit? Why not audit? Your books are audited in the office. Your financial records are audited by an accounting firm. Now, I will tell you that our proposal for auditing probably does not go far enough in the eyes of some advocacy groups. I will tell you right now it doesn't. I was asked by a House counsel the other day, last week, about audits. And the bottom line was, and I told them this, you give us the people and you give us the money and we'll do those audits. Because there's actually some talk about some discussion out there has been with compliance audits, making sure the supervisors are complying with what the Florida Code says. We're not there. What we want to do is we want to make sure that ballots cast in an election are being tabulated accurately. So whether the supervisor does that publicly, not privately, but publicly, after notice, then that's our proposal. And I'm sure as it goes through the legislative process, that will be fashioned and modified and what have you. I will tell you, we'll be opening up the voting system standards rule for the vpat. We'll also be reopening the manual recount rule to make modifications there in light of the governor's proposal. And then we will also be creating or writing a new rule dealing with the manual audit of ballots, of precincts. And that will obviously wait until after the legislative session. But the purpose of the auditing rule will be so that Pinellas County and Lake County and Nassau County are all doing it the same way. It will be very detailed. It will give you specifics as far as noticing requirements, location requirements, time frames, how you go about doing it. Probably give a form that would need to be filed with the department so that when the form comes in from Pinellas, one's going to look just like Lake County and looks like just like Nassau County. Sterling.
You want to talk about the timeline and forms that will be handed out so that supervisors have an idea of what reports are expected?
Yes, goes back to my little diatribe just a couple of minutes ago. We are, what's your name? Amy. Amy will be preparing, hopefully for distribution at the May conference in Sandestin, a material that will list all the deadlines that supervisors will need to be complying with over the next 6 months. Giving you the forms, so you know what the forms look like, know what the deadlines are, and it's our way of saying, mark your calendar. Mark your calendar. It helps avoid or eliminate the phone calls from my office to your office saying, Deb, where's your report? Or do you know the report is due tomorrow? So Amy's going to be putting that together, and like every 6 months or so, she's going to be getting that out to the supervisors just as an FYI. Mark your calendars. Be aware that here's the deadlines, and hopefully that will be a benefit to the counties. Buddy, you have a question or comment?
Comment that again, nothing is not good. And what occurs to me, Deb and I serve on the National Task Force of the Election Center Education and Training. I'm actually on the Deb subcommittee, as it turned out. And Kurt, I think you were going to serve on that committee. The Election Center is a national repository of information for elections. And in January, as you know, of course, the assumption was that the Holt bill, which is Rush Holt, Congressman Holt, or the Clinton bill, would see vpats rush through the Congress and we would all be implementing vpat. So as I'm listening to you explain this, and of course this is new for all of us, if Congress, in their infinite wisdom about elections, implements or mandates vpats, and we're in the middle of that transition, and we're trying to digest what you're telling us. I mean, what you have said is that we're not eliminating vpats, we're tasting of that. We have a proven system of optical scan. You haven't said vote centers are impossible or off the table. You haven't said vote by mail is now ruled forever gone. It's an interesting landscape with which to move us forward to the next to a next step, which seems to me to be very positive, without tying everything so tightly that we can't look for more improvement yet.
Let me mention the whole bill, and I was asked the other day by the council of one of the committees, legislature, that I kind of see it like this. Here we are out here, and the whole bill is back here, feds are back here. And they actually asked me about this, and they said, what if? I said, my best guess is that sooner than later, Congress is going to be dealing with this bill back here. Whether it's the Clinton bill, whether it's the whole bill, whomever's bill, they're going to be dealing with it. As we're going down this parallel path, I don't think that we as Floridians can sit there and just pull over on the side of the road waiting for the whole bill to work its way through Congress. So that being the case, and I've pledged this to the governor, that we're not, and the legislature, that we're not going to get out there, encourage something to be passed, only knowing that it's in direct conflict with this proposal here. My guess is that very soon we will be up like this. Very, very close on knowing what the feds are going to require and what we're contemplating. And my guess is that before May 6th, when the legislature adjourns, that we will in fact know very clearly what Congress is going to do with vpats. My reading of the whole bill is that even if they required vpats, my take on it is that even if Florida did go with optical scan in the precincts, that we're okay. Because the whole deal was to put paper or ballots back out in paper. Now, we don't want to get out there and, because there was some proposal, some talk about actually doing away with DREs altogether and going with all optical scan. And there was some federal talk about that. So we would not want to even allow our early voting sites to use vpats, only to find out that now we're bumping up against the federal law. So we are watching it, we are tracking it, and making sure that we don't get so far out ahead of the feds or Congress that we have an issue at hand. Okay? Yes, sir.
Yeah, could you clarify a point on recounting? Under current Florida law, doesn't an election contest have to be within a quarter point in order to manually recount all or some precincts? Is that correct?
It starts at 0.5%.
It's within 0.5%?
Less than a half goes to machine. Less than a quarter goes to manual. That's what the law says.
So if you suspected, if there was a crazy problem with the machines that they were all putting out, 100% one candidate, you wouldn't be able to check those ballots manually? Under the law?
The law talks about recounts. Machine recounts, the criteria for machine recounts and the criteria for manual recounts. And as far as counties just going in, and certainly I don't know any supervisor that I think of, that would, if they saw an anomaly like that, would not go in and check to make sure that things were right.
Does
Yes,
the
ma'am.
canvassing board have that authority?
I think the canvassing board doesn't have that authority. They're the ones that are signing off or certifying that election.
Right.
So if that county canvassing board, as I said, saw an anomaly, saw something where, using your illustration, that you have a candidate receive 100% of the votes, that's not possible when I was a candidate, but if in fact, that was a joke, guys, that the canvassing board has the authority to go back in and look at that race, and why wouldn't they?
I would take it a step further. I would say not just the authority, but an obligation to
Yes.
do that.
Well, they wouldn't, because Florida law says they're not allowed to recount any precincts unless the contest is within a quarter percentage point.
And that's for races that are being challenged by candidates. That's for the candidates. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Karen.
Kurt, do you think that they will expand a little bit on the early voting sites so that we can have some other buildings to work with?
In a word, no. No. Next question. No. I just do not see early voting sites being expanded. That is not in our proposal. It's in the supervisor's proposal, and I encourage the supervisors to work tirelessly if that's what they want. But at this point, you ask my personal opinion, not the Department of Farmer State's opinion or the governor's opinion. But my guess is that early voting sites will not be expanded to other than what they have today. Okay. Other questions? Yes, sir.
This is not germane to the machines, but is there any discussion in Tallahassee of having a voting holiday on the general election?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of.
Like
Not that I'm
state
aware.
employees, federal employees could man you'd have manpower that day
There's a
for the
number.
voting, for the voting districts.
There's a number. I think Broward County has come up with I will say, unique answer to that issue by working an agreement out with their district school system that they physically closed schools on general election day. They encourage teachers to work polls. They have no kids in the school, so they can use them as polling places. And I think you're finding more and more counties, supervisors speak to this better than I, but pulling out of schools where they can simply because of the public safety issues. I know Pasco uses no schools. That was one of the last things I did when I was up there, is pulled out the last school that we had because of public safety. Pinellas County doesn't use schools. So as far as a holiday, I know of nothing going on currently up there about holidays.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Certainly as we go through this process, there's going to be a lot of questions. I will have questions, staff will have questions, you supervisors and your staff will have questions. And we just want to do the right thing, and whether you support it or not. And I guess I'm not sure I even answered Buddy's question as far as what you need to support. My purpose of my time with you this morning was not to solicit support for this. That was not my purpose. My purpose was to give you information other than what you read in the media. I want you to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. But so that you can formulate what's in the best interest of your county. There will always be those issues that you will end up dealing with the supervisors as to how am I going to answer this point with my Board of County Commissioners? How am I going to deal with my voters on this point for those that like the touch screen? If I don't do it, how am I going to answer this point with those voters that demand a piece of paper that they want their ballots on? And I just want you to be fully equipped with the information that we have and what we believe to be the best route to go. Obviously, supervisors are certainly free to take their own position on it and lobby their legislators. We'll be working with the legislature and letting them know why we believe this to be the best option for Florida. And so, I mean, I'm certainly sure there's going to be issues that we'll be able to agree on, and there will be those that we can't. But I'm hopeful the supervisors, in large part, would be supportive of the proposal. Yes, ma'am.
It looks like we're winding down. I wanted to give you all one more thing to think about, actually, not one, but a few. My name is Pam Hengel, and I'm president of the Voting Integrity Alliance of Tampa Bay. And Secretary Browning was kind enough to give me and a few other leaders of groups across the state an opportunity to speak with him earlier in the week. We had a good conversation, and we do congratulate both the Secretary and the Governor for this amazing first step. And I wanted to pass out, if I may I pass this out?
That's fine with me. Or make it available maybe when they leave.
This is a position paper that we, over 9 groups across the state, have signed on to, and it lists out the 5 most important things that we believe as voters and as representatives for voters across the state should be addressed. And one of the main concerns that we have is that that what we're proposing has the potential for setting up a system that is separate but unequal. We are relegating our disabled and language minority voters still to paperless touchscreen voting systems that have the potential for meltdown, like we saw in Sarasota County. We're very, very concerned about that, and we don't want the state any longer to be in the news for these kinds of problems. This is a paper and position that we're gathering more and more support for every day. And these are the things that you're going to continue to hear if we move forward with early voting on paperless touchscreen. And that is the main thing that we're concerned about. There are other things listed. But as you contemplate where we're going in your counties and in your state, we ask that you mainly consider that. And also with early voting, we feel like it's time that Florida do the right thing. We don't want the tail wagging the dog here. And going with early voting on paperless touchscreens because of a precinct reporting requirement that is unnecessarily complicated when the voters of Florida really want to go back to a paper-based system. And thank you for
Sure.
that moment.
Well, let me just real quickly, as a matter of fact, there were some points were raised in some editorials or some news articles that the governor's plan calls for paper to be attached to touchscreen units for early voting, so that we have a record of those votes that are cast on touchscreen. I keep hearing these comments made about language issues, and I'm really, as an election official, I'm trying to get through my head how moving towards this proposal impacts languages. If there has ever been a voting system out there that accommodates languages, it's touchscreen voting systems. Because you're able to, in those counties, and even Broward, Miami-Dade, where they're having English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole, those ballots are in those languages. And the optical scan ballots are already printed in these multiple languages. So language, folks that have the language issues, those are being accommodated. Matter of fact, they're being accommodated pursuant to Section 203 of the Voting Rights Act. So I'm not sure where we're coming from when we say that we're busted on the folks that have language issues.
I can answer that, and that is that all of the voters that we have polled and talked to across the state are concerned when we see situations like Sarasota happening that their votes are going to be lost, whether they're an able-bodied voter, a handicapped voter, or a language minority voter. If in fact we do move to optical scan, right now the optical scans that we have certified don't give multiple language feedback for undervotes, overvotes, and that's where that's coming from.
Okay, so it's not with voting, it's not with the ballot methodology, it's the small LED screen on the tabulators.
Yes, exactly,
Okay.
because your ballots are going to come in.
Right,
multiple
and just, as a matter of fact, talking to Lester Sola even yesterday, that was a point that Supervisor Sola had raised with us, and making sure that on the precinct tabulators, and everything, you folks know what I'm talking about, there's a small LED screen on there that when you go to have an overvote, it will spit the ballot back to you and it will say overvote. And Lester pointed out to us, it's not so much an issue with languages than it is the privacy issue. Now, and we told Lester this yesterday, and he says, you know what, I understand. He says that with all these different things out there, and as we approach the 2008, and please don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but not being one of those things that we want to try to pull over on the side of the road for and waiting for that technology to catch up. We believe that there are probably steps that can be taken to ensure privacy of voters. And I will tell you, one of the accommodations, and this is something supervisors have to work on, but even when it comes to accommodations of polling places for ADA, one of the temporary accommodations for a door that has a doorknob, a round doorknob, is you have a poll worker there that opens that door for you. So one of the things that we suggest in the interim until we can get to that point is that you have poll worker intervention that can speak the language that you're looking at. Now that's going to require supervisors to go, rustle the bushes and try to find those workers that speak either Haitian Creole or Spanish or whatever language minority that they need to deal with. Now I don't want to, by comments, I don't want to have taken and misinterpreted as being unsympathetic or non-responsive, because that's not the case. We are very much aware of the language issue. And obviously as a former supervisor and now the secretary, I want to make sure that we're in compliance with Section 203 of the Voting Rights Act. And my understanding is that all of our counties are that have those language issues. We are all compliant with the Voting Rights Act. We don't need any more intervention with the federal government in Florida's elections. We just don't need it. That being said, we're aware of it. We'll continue to work with vendors on that issue. It's not as simple So we've been told, that we haven't had time to really delve into it, but it's not just as simple as saying, okay, flip a switch and say, I want it now in Spanish. I wish it were that simple, but where we have it, next week. So we are aware of that, and now I understand what you're talking about the language minorities. Okay? Yes, sir.
Just one other thing, after the recent legislative session on the insurance issue, and I don't know if what I've read in the media is accurate or not, but the governor suggested that local governments are overspending at the county level. Then more recently, the governor was quoted in the our local newspaper saying that this transition to optical scan voting would not cost the counties anything. Now we're hearing that it will cost the counties something, and the larger counties it will cost more. So I would hope that the governor would be sensitive to that, and I'm sure that you will help him see the light on this.
Thank you, Deb.
And I do want to say, I think you are absolutely the best choice. I applaud the governor for his appointment. This is the first time since I've been in the elections office that I feel we truly have a representative and somebody who understands what we do at the state level. And I appreciate the fact that you're willing to take this on.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Sometimes I wonder why. Karen, you have a second? Karen?
And I'm just going to bring it up again about the early voting sites, because I want you all to really be sensitive to this. And I know that you may not want to go there, and it's not maybe a real hot item with you guys with everything else that's going on. But in a county like Sumter, and I have to use this because we are so rural, I don't have the availability of the buildings like the larger counties do. I mean, in the south we have more cows than people. So I don't have the availability of buildings. Not knowing what kind of equipment that we may have to wind up going to. I mean, I have a problem now in that the buildings that I do have, it's all that I can do, especially on the north end now where the villages are, although they just about got blown away, to put enough Ivotronics in a room for that many people that I have on the north end. But the equipment that we may have to go to with the buildings that I have, the accommodation of the equipment in that size building or no buildings available at all, I'm in a real pickle for the load that I have on the north end as compared to the south end, and being able to find that balance between equipment, availability of buildings, and accommodating my voters. Somebody out there needs to be sensitive to that.
And I'm a former supervisor, I know. But talk to your legislators. Talk to your legislators. Find a sympathetic ear. And
Who is not being sensitive to it? Maybe that's who I need to go see.
why don't we just talk after the meeting? Okay? Buddy, you have anything?
I was just going to help you out with the answer.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, you floundered
I
around.
have a pretty good idea.
Anything, as I said, as we go down this path, you'll hear a lot more from Amy, Dollar, and myself. What's that? Yeah, Amy. We, like I said, there's a lot to be done as we plan to prepare. And if you have questions, once you leave here today, if you have other questions or issues, you thought of something you need an answer for, call me. My number is 245-6502. It's 850-245-6502. Call, and I am there usually from sun up to sundown. And at least until my wife comes into town. And then it'll still be sun up to sundown. Folks, I appreciate the time today. Thank you so very much. Have a good one.
Thank you very much.
How are you?
Some of our activists suggested that you could solve problem, even in an interim basis, by putting posters up, and they've done this in San Francisco, where you put up translation posters and also hand out little translation flyers as voters.
Of course, we've got to be very careful when we pass out of the polls, because next thing you know, we get slammed. But I understand what you're saying, and I will tell you, I'm sure the vendors are very well aware of it. So we'll continue monitoring it. But I do think, and Pam, I really do believe that it's the right thing to do. We're moving. I mean, we could have had someone there who says it's staying just the way that it is, and that's not the case. So you're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks.
Mr. Brown, you were saying that part of the problem was defending the touchscreen voting machines, and that it was very hard to satisfy all the advocacy groups on this voting issue.
I'm not defending touchscreen voting systems.
Okay, but I guess what I'm saying is it still on the table in order to eliminate those DREs during the early voting? If we can figure out a system logistically that works well.
This proposal calls for providing for vpats on all your DREs for early voting. That is what is certified.
Right, but you wouldn't necessarily have to use DREs at all for early voting.
No, you can use optical scan if you like.
Right.
But tends to be a little.
Because separating out all the
It's not necessarily the precinct by precinct. It's not necessarily the precinct by precinct results. I think it's the amount of ballots that you're having to deal with. You're talking about Miami-Dade has 1,500 different types of ballots in a September 08 primary because of precinct committee men and committee women. So you're going to have 1,500 separate, unique stacks of paper in 20 different sites. And unless you've seen it and unless you've been involved with it, you don't understand it.
Right. Well, that's Miami-Dade, but Pinellas, I think, only has about 300.
Sure. So we're going to write a law for Pinellas and carve out an exception for Miami-Dade? Is that what you're advocating?
No, not necessarily. I'm just saying maybe.
What are you advocating then? I mean,
what's the solution?
I'm saying as many counties as possible should eliminate DREs.
Sure, and what you're doing is
possible.
and what you're saying is that we're going to have a standard for these size counties, and then we're going to have a different standard for these size counties. That's what you're saying.
Well,
that's what you're saying.
Then we better come up with something better.
We are.
And one other question, if you got another second.
I've got to run to the
what
airport
will
and
be
catch a
cheaper
plane.
in the long run, the paper ballot scanners or the DREs as far as annual costs? All right, thank you, sir.
You designed the thing so we can go boom, boom.